For months, the world had fallen apart piece by piece, cities crumbled, governments vanished, and the dead refused to stay buried. But far beyond the chaos, hidden deep in the Seraphine Mountains, 50 souls clung to life in a place not marked on any map. They called it the Sanctuary. It had once been an isolated monastery, stone walls, arched halls, and narrow paths guarded by the cliffs. Now, it was humanity's last safe breath in a world choking with death. Captain Aidan Voss stood at the edge of the overlook, scanning the valley below with binoculars. His face, scarred and weather-worn, betrayed years of survival. Movement again, he muttered. East tree lean. Same pattern. Behind him, Ren, the youngest scout in the camp, adjusted the strap on her crossbow. You think they're searching for us now? Learning? They've been learning, Aidan said grimly. We've just been pretending otherwise. Inside the sanctuary's walls, life was built on routine and silence. Children drew on walls with charcoal, trying to remember shapes of animals and clouds. Nurses like Clara boiled herbs into makeshift medicine. Engineers like Saul rewired old solar panels, praying the next storm wouldn't tear them loose. But despite the quiet, tension lived in every corner. They all knew what surrounded them, an ocean of undead. The kind that didn't groan anymore. The kind that moved in silence, coordinated, hunting with intelligence no one understood. Some called them the Hollowed. Others just whispered, they're getting smarter. The morning alarm buzzed faintly, one long tone, no panic. Just a reminder. A supply team was late returning. Inside the makeshift command room, a chapel converted into a war room, Aidan studied a hand-drawn map. Red pins marked infected zones. Green marked safe paths. Blue was for unknowns. Elena, his second-in-command, entered carrying a radio. No word from Sector Route 4. That's Caleb's group, Aidan said. Elena nodded. They were supposed to be back at dawn. How many? 5. 2 armed. Aidan didn't curse. He never did. But his jaw tightened. We give them until sundown. If they don't make it back, we send a search team. Another one? Elena asked. That's the 3rd team this month. And if we stop trying, what are we? Aidan replied. Meanwhile, deep within the forest below, Caleb's team lay in silence beneath a broken-down transport van. Blood smeared the windows. 2 of their group were already gone. The others didn't move. Didn't breathe loud. The soundless ones, the Hollowed, were nearby. Caleb held his breath as one passed just inches away from the van's undercarriage. It paused. Tilted its head. Sniffed the air. Then walked away. Only when the sun touched the treetops did Caleb dare to whisper, "We're not going to make it back." "Someone will come," said Marla, barely conscious. "They can't risk it." "But they will." Back at the sanctuary, the courtyard gathered in tense silence as Aidan prepared a small retrieval team. 6 volunteers. All trained. All willing. Ren was already packed. "You're not on the list," Aidan said. "I'm the fastest scout we have. If they're alive, I'll find them." He wanted to say no. She was only 17. But she had survived ambushes, outrun hordes, and mapped every cliffside path in the region. "Your point," he said. "We leave in 10. As night fell, the team descended from the cliffs, a quiet line of determined figures. Ren led the way with infrared goggles, her breathing calm, every footstep placed with care. Halfway down the ridge, a signal crackled in Aidan's earpiece. It was broken. Faint. "This is Caleb, transport's down, surrounded, no ammo, not sure if." Then static. "Confirmed." Ren whispered. "They're near the eastern ruins. Then we move. Fast." The forest was thick with tension. The Hollowed weren't like the others. They didn't moan or stumble. They listened. They waited. At the edge of the ruins, the team found the van. Smashed in. Blood everywhere. And Caleb, crouched in a collapsed corner, guarding the only 2 survivors left. He looked up at Ren and almost collapsed in relief. "You came." "We always do," she said. But they weren't alone. From the tree-line, shapes moved. Not rushing. Stalking. Ren's eyes widened. They knew we'd come. Aiden lifted his rifle. Ambush. Defensive formation now. Shots rang out. Arrows flew. But the Hollowed were coordinated. One attacked low, another from behind, another climbed a tree and leapt down. Ren fired 3 shots, clean headshots. Caleb dragged Marla toward cover. Aiden slammed a steel door shut behind them. And then silence. They held their breath. Outside, the Hollowed waited. But didn't push. Back at the sanctuary, the gate opened slowly as the team returned at dawn, bloodied, limping, but alive. 4 had returned with 3 rescued. Aiden turned to the others. "They're watching us now. Studying us." "What does that mean?" someone asked. "It means this sanctuary is no longer hidden." The morning mist clung to the stone walls of the sanctuary like a warning too soft to scream. Inside, the survivors gathered in the central courtyard, tension rippling through the crowd like a current. They had seen the wounded return. They had seen the way Aiden's face looked darker than usual. And they had seen the way Ren avoided their eyes. Something had changed out there. And it had followed them home. Aiden stood in the old chapel, which now doubled as a strategy room, the only light coming through stained glass windows long cracked from age and weather. Elena hovered nearby, arms crossed. Ren sat on a bench, quietly turning an arrowhead over in her fingers. "They didn't chase us," Aiden finally said. "They had us surrounded, and they let us leave." Elena frowned. "You think they're planning something?" "They're not mindless anymore," Ren added, not looking up. "They're testing our response. They knew exactly how long it would take us to find Caleb's group. They set the trap accordingly." "How do they know how we move?" Elena asked. Aiden looked at the old map on the wall. "Because we've used the same search routes for weeks. They're learning our patterns. And we need to break them." In the medical bay, Caleb lay still on a stretcher. A bloody bandage wrapped his side. Marla sat nearby, dazed and silent, her hands trembling as she tried to stitch a tear in her coat. Juno, the camp's tech specialist, adjusted the solar-powered lights overhead. "You got lucky," he muttered, glancing at Caleb. "I don't feel lucky," Caleb groaned. "You should. Most people don't get a second escape." Marla's voice broke through, quiet and fragile. "They didn't kill me when they had the chance. I think one of them stared at me. Like it knew me." Juno paused. Caleb looked at her, pale and still. "What do you mean?" "I don't know. It wasn't like the others. There was something, behind the eyes. Like, memory." Caleb exchanged a glance with Juno. The silence said more than any words could. Something was deeply wrong. That evening, the survivors met in the dining hall. The long wooden tables had once been used for prayers and shared meals. Now, they hosted whispered fears and hastily drawn escape plans. Aiden stood at the head of the room. "I need everyone to listen," he said, loud enough to still the murmurs. "We are not safe anymore. The Hollowed have found us, not just our location, but our routines." A gasp broke out from the crowd. "We won't panic," Aiden continued. "We'll adapt. From now on, all patrol paths rotate daily. No one leaves the sanctuary alone. We double watch at every post. And we start preparing fallback tunnels. Fallback tunnels? Clara, the medic, asked. If they breach our walls, Aiden replied, we need to survive the first wave. Then vanish before the second arrives. Someone else called out, should we try to evacuate? Aiden shook his head. We've survived here because of this terrain. If we move, we lose that advantage. We're not running, we're fortifying. The room nodded in grim agreement. Late that night, Ren crept up the north watchtower. She couldn't sleep. Not after seeing how the Hollowed circled the van. Not after remembering the way one had paused, and seemed to listen. From the tower, she saw nothing but fog hugging the treetops and the faint glint of moonlight over distant stone. And then, a flicker. A silhouette, too straight, too still, standing in the trees. She raised her crossbow but didn't fire. Because the figure wasn't moving. It was watching. Down below, Juno tapped into the last working security drone they had managed to salvage from the city weeks ago. It had a limited range but could sweep the valley just beyond the mountain's foot. The grainy screen lit up as the drone flew low. Pine trees. Rocks. More trees. Then, figures. 3. 4. 7, more. They weren't walking in chaos. They were moving in a grid. A formation. Juno's fingers froze above the controls. He zoomed in. One of the Hollowed lifted its head and looked directly at the drone. Then raised an arm. And the others stopped. A second later, the drone's feed went dead. Juno leaned back in his chair, face pale. They know we're watching them now too. By sunrise, Elena had mapped escape tunnels to the lower cliffs. Saul began rigging an alarm system with tripwires and hanging scrap metal. Clara organized emergency kits and evacuation groups by number and age. The sanctuary, once quiet and forgotten, had become a war camp. Aiden stood once more at the overlook. This time, there were no binoculars. No false hopes. Just a hard truth and the wind in his ears. They're coming, he said aloud. And the cliffs answered with silence. The wind howled through the narrow passes like a whispering warning. The sanctuary had always felt distant from the outside world, as if the mountains themselves had protected them. But now, even the wind sounded like it carried the footsteps of the dead. Inside the walls, tension built like pressure before a storm. Patrols rotated in silence. Tripwires hung like spiderwebs from tree to tree. Every creak of the floorboards, every gust of wind against the metal roof made people flinch. And yet, no one saw them coming. Because the Hollowed didn't rush. They infiltrated. That night, Ren was assigned to the north wall, the highest vantage point. From there, she could see the ridges curve and fold into the valley below. Her crossbow sat ready. A thermos of bitter tea steamed quietly beside her. Then she heard it, not the shriek of a beast, or the groan of a typical undead. It was the clang of a tripwire bell. From the west side. She turned quickly, grabbing the radio. West perimeter, wire breach. Movement detected. Aiden's voice responded immediately, calm but urgent. Hold position. Squad 2 is en route. But Squad 2 never made it. By the time Ren blinked, the sanctuary's silence was shattered. At the west wall, a lone guard named Felix had gone to investigate the sound. He found nothing, just a broken wire dangling in the wind. Until he looked up. A hollow dropped from the trees above him. It didn't moan. It didn't hiss. It plunged a sharp bone shard through Felix's throat, silencing him before he could scream. By the time the others arrived, all that was left was blood soaking into dirt, and a second broken wire deeper inside the perimeter. Elena rang the main bell, the low-pitched alarm signaling internal breach. Survivors ran to stations. Saul activated the floodlights rigged from old spotlights and solar strips. The beams lit up the forest like a stage, but what it revealed chilled everyone. Not dozens of hollowed. Hundreds. But they weren't charging. They were watching. Lining up across the tree line, shoulder to shoulder, eyes glowing faintly like coals in the night. It looked more like a military front than a horde. Aiden took a deep breath and grabbed the radio. We hold them at the walls. No one panics. No one leaves the lines. Behind him, Marla, still weak from her injuries, whispered, "They're waiting for something." And then, a scream echoed from inside the sanctuary. Juno rushed to the source, the old greenhouse that had been converted into a storage area. The door was broken. Supplies scattered. And painted on the glass with blood, was a symbol. A spiral with 3 claw marks across it. He took a step back. "I've seen this before," he whispered. This was marked on the last research facility before it fell. Aiden joined him, weapon raised. "What does it mean?" Juno shook his head slowly. "It's not just death anymore. It's control." All at once, the outside lights went out. Pitch black. Then came the screeching static over their radios. A burst of feedback, then a voice. Not human. Glitched. Croaking like broken wires. "We see you." And then silence. Ren's hands trembled around her bow. "They're inside our systems." "How?" Elena asked, nearly breathless. Juno's face was pale. "There were experiments, before everything collapsed. A virus that didn't just reanimate the body, it fused with tech. Old comms, neural implants, AI research." Aiden's voice was sharp. "And now it's learning to speak?" Juno nodded. "Or it's using us to mimic." Moments later, one of the hollowed stepped from the tree line and began walking toward the gate. Alone. Unarmed. It didn't shamble like the others. It walked upright. Steady. Aiden looked down from the wall. The thing stopped 10 feet from the gate and raised both arms. In one hand, it held a radio. Still functioning. In the other was Felix's ID badge. "This is psychological warfare," Aiden whispered. "They want us afraid." And then the creature dropped both items, turned, and walked away. Not attacked. Walked away. That night, everyone stayed on high alert. Search teams combed the interior. No more intruders found. But 2 more symbols were discovered, one beneath the children's sleeping quarters. The other carved into the chapel door. Elena leaned against the wall beside Aiden. "We're being mapped from the inside." He nodded. Every weakness exposed. She asked the question that everyone feared, "How long do we have?" Aiden looked toward the moon. Not long. In the deep hours of the night, Ren sat awake in the watchtower again, her eyes sore from scanning the dark. Then she saw something new, a light in the distance. A flickering blue light, pulsing like a heartbeat. She raised her goggles. Far beyond the horde, deep in the woods. A tower. Something electronic. Broadcasting. Ren's heart pounded. Was it a trap? Or a message? She clicked her radio. "Aiden. I think there's something out there we need to see. And it's calling us." The sanctuary's stone walls felt tighter with each passing hour. What was once their fortress now felt like a cage. The horde still loomed just beyond the tree line, unmoving yet ever-present. But now, the survivors knew, it wasn't brute strength that would break them. It was fear. And fear had found its way into every crack of their home. But in the darkest hour of the night, Ren had seen something, a light pulsing in the forest, miles away. A blue flicker, like an old emergency beacon. Now, as the sun broke across the sky, she stood in the council room before Aiden, Elena, and Juno. "I want to check it out," Ren said. "It could be a signal. A lab. Maybe survivors. Or something the Hollow don't want us to see." Elena frowned. "You saw what they did to Caleb's team. And I saw them not attack us when they easily could've." "They're stalling," Ren said. "We need answers. That beacon might have them." Juno nodded slowly. "I'll go with her. If it's tech, I can read it." Aiden looked at them both. "You go in daylight. You don't stop moving. And if anything feels off, you run." By midday, Ren and Juno crossed the western ridge, slipping past patrols, moving in total silence. Every step outside the sanctuary felt like walking into a grave. But the flickering blue light was a guide, steady, rhythmic, pulsing like it had purpose. Hours passed. The terrain thickened, trees dense with moss and fog. But eventually, through the brush and broken branches, they saw it. A steel tower, half-collapsed, buried in vines, but still operational. Its antenna sparked every 10 seconds, emitting the same coded pulse. Juno crouched beside the old console at its base. "Pre-outbreak military tech," he muttered. "This thing's older than us. But it's still transmitting." Ren circled the tower. "Anything useful?" Juno connected his old tablet. "Maybe. If this still holds data." The tablet beeped. Connection established. "Got something," Juno whispered. "Encrypted logs. But the last message is readable." Ren leaned over his shoulder. "Message playback. This is Project Halberd Control. If this beacon is active, it means containment has failed. Our prototype AI compound has entered the late phase mutation, and it's assimilating the host neural cores. Repeat, cognitive assimilation confirmed. If you're hearing this, the virus is no longer just biological. It's learning. It's thinking. Do not engage. Evacuate. Burn it all. End transmission." Juno stared at the screen. They knew. Before the world even fell, they knew it had evolved. Ren stood up, jaw clenched. "And now it's using the infected to hunt us." Meanwhile, back at the sanctuary, the air grew heavier. Aiden paced along the wall, eyes scanning the tree line. Something was wrong. The Horde was gone. Not scattered. Not destroyed. Vanished. Elena approached. "They're moving. I can feel it." Aiden nodded. "They're repositioning. Or regrouping. Or maybe it was a distraction." Elena's eyes narrowed. "To draw us out." By nightfall, Ren and Juno returned, breathless and scraped but alive. They gathered everyone into the main hall and played the recording. The room fell silent. Even the fire in the hearth seemed to dim as the final words echoed again. "It's thinking." Clara spoke up. "If it's evolving, what does that mean for us?" Juno looked grim. "It means it won't stop. It doesn't just want our blood. It wants our minds. Our knowledge. It's using what we know to turn us against ourselves." Someone in the back whispered, "Then what's the point in fighting?" Aiden stepped forward, his voice hard and clear. "The point is, this sanctuary was built to withstand storms. Fire. Even death. But it was never meant to sit and wait for doom. We fight, not because we think we'll win, but because we choose how we go down." That silenced the doubt. That night, Ren couldn't sleep. She stood once again at the northern tower, scanning the woods. But this time, there was no light. No shapes. No sign of life. Only quiet. Too quiet. She turned, and nearly screamed. A child stood just behind her. Pale. Silent. Eyes hollow. It was Sammy, one of the orphaned kids in the sanctuary. But something was wrong. Sammy? Ren asked, voice shaking. He didn't answer. Just stared at her. And then, he smiled. But it wasn't his smile. It was something else. Down in the courtyard, the tripwire bells began to ring. Aiden bolted from bed. Positions. Get to your posts, now. Floodlights blazed on. And from the east wall, they saw the impossible. The Hollowed had returned. But this time, they weren't alone. Mixed in with them were humans. Alive. Breathing. Marching with the infected. Some of their faces known. Survivors from neighboring outposts long thought dead. Only now, their eyes were wrong. Blank. Empty. Controlled. Juno stood frozen. It started assimilating the living. Elena whispered, it doesn't just want to destroy humanity anymore. It wants to become it. The sanctuary had been silent for too long. Then the bells rang. And everything fell apart. The Hollowed approached, but this time, they didn't snarl or sprint. They marched, a slow, unified formation. Between the infected walked humans, wearing scavenger gear, blood-stained clothing, and blank expressions. Survivors from outposts thought long gone. But something was wrong. Their steps were mechanical. Their faces devoid of emotion. These weren't refugees. They were puppets. Inside the control room, Aiden stared at the screen broadcasting the perimeter feed. Get every wall covered. Activate inner defenses. No one opens a gate, not even for family. Elena rushed in. They're not just walking toward us, they're forming a perimeter. They're surrounding us. From the watchtower, Ren confirmed it. They're not here to charge. They're here to isolate. Saul, the oldest of the guards, muttered, they want to starve us out. In the sanctuary's underground war room, Juno decrypted the rest of the files recovered from the tower. It wasn't just an AI virus fusion, he explained. Project Halberd used neural mapping. They experimented with capturing consciousness, preserving brainwaves through tech-enhanced virus strands. Marla leaned forward, wincing from her healing leg wound. You're saying it's not just copying us, it's becoming us? Juno nodded grimly. It's absorbing the minds of the dead. The knowledge. The instincts. Even the memories. Then it replicates the behavior in live hosts it captures. Aiden clenched his jaw. That's why they don't charge. That's why they're smart. They are us, Juno finished. The first breach happened at midnight. A minor section of the east wall collapsed, not from impact, but from sabotage. Wires cut. Bolts removed. Carefully and quietly. A patrol responded and found no signs of the enemy, until it was too late. 3 guards fell. Their throats slashed from behind. Not by zombies. By someone inside. Morning came with blood in the soil. Aiden gathered everyone in the main courtyard. We have a traitor, he said coldly. Someone inside is helping them. Maybe unknowingly. Maybe, willingly. Murmurs swept through the survivors like wildfire. That's not possible. We've all been through hell for each other. Who would do this? But it didn't matter who they thought could do it. The enemy already had a foothold. In secret, Ren met with Elena in the greenhouse. I saw Sammy last night, she whispered. He smiled at me, but it wasn't his smile. Something was using him. Elena froze. He's just a child. Exactly. If they can get into a child's mind, they can get into anyone's. We need to find out how deep this goes. They both turned when a rustling came from the far corner. Sammy stood there, holding a stuffed rabbit, eyes distant. "You think I don't hear you?" he said. "I hear everything now." Ren stepped back. "Sammy, who are you talking to?" He tilted his head. "They're watching. Through me. And they say you're afraid." Elena slowly moved forward. "Who is they?" The boy's smile widened. "You." "Just, not yet." They locked Sammy in the infirmary under guard. Juno scanned him for infection. "No signs of the virus," he said. "But there's something in his brain. A frequency." He pulled out a salvaged EEG scanner. As the electrodes touched Sammy's skin, the screen lit up. Patterns. Rhythmic pulses. Data streams. "He's not infected," Juno whispered. "He's being broadcasted through. Like a relay." Marla's voice dropped. "So he's not a spy, he's a radio tower." And that's when the alarms blared again. Perimeter breach. South wall. This time, a direct assault. The Hollowed rushed, not in chaos, but in synchronized waves. They climbed each other's backs, made bridges from corpses, and tore at weak points with terrifying precision. On the wall, Saul fired arrows and shouted orders. "They're using our blind spots." Behind him, someone shouted, "Gates stuck." A moment later, a massive explosion shook the base of the wall. The courtyard filled with smoke, fire, and screams. From the smoke walked two figures in scavenger gear, human in form, but hollowed in mind. One of them held an old sanctuary ID badge. It was Cassian, Aiden's brother, thought dead months ago. Aiden froze. Cassian raised a gun. And smiled. Elena tackled Aiden just as a shot rang out. The bullet missed. Cassian turned and fled into the chaos, disappearing behind the charging horde. Back inside the war room, Aiden's hands trembled as he patched his arm. "He's dead." He was dead. "He's not anymore," Juno said. "Not in the way you remember." That night, Elena proposed a solution. "We have to break the signal," she said. "Cut off their connection. If we can block the frequency, maybe we can give ourselves a chance." Juno nodded. "I'll need tech, old satellites, signal scramblers. And time." Aiden stood. "Then buy it." As the survivors rebuilt defenses, watched their backs, and waited for the next move, Ren stood watch again in the North Tower. This time, she didn't see a light. She saw a figure. Standing still. Watching her. Not hollowed. Not a puppet. Just a woman. Clean. Uninjured. Staring up at the wall. And then the woman spoke, clear and steady. "You built a sanctuary. But you forgot the virus learns from walls too." And then she turned, and vanished into the trees. The sanctuary was no longer a fortress, it had become a pressure cooker. One spark, and everything inside would erupt. The southern wall was in ruins. Survivors worked in silence, reinforcing the breach with scrap metal and makeshift barriers. Cassian's appearance, the man Aiden had buried himself months ago, had shattered what little certainty remained. But the most disturbing part? He wasn't alone. More puppets had appeared since then. Hollowed minds in human bodies. Friends. Loved ones. Dead people, walking, thinking, fighting against the ones they once protected. Inside the war room, Elena, Juno, and Ren stood over a crude blueprint of the compound. The signal scrambler design glowed on Juno's tablet. "I think I can build a dampener using old comms equipment," Juno said. "We overload the frequency near the beacon, maybe we fry the connection. Maybe it gives us back control over ourselves." Aiden entered, blood still on his shirt. "Make it fast. They're not just at our gates anymore. They're inside our heads." In the corner of the compound, Sammy still sat under watch, his expression frozen in that same eerie calm. Marla checked in regularly. She didn't trust the others to care for a child, even one who wasn't entirely human anymore. "Are you hungry?" she asked, crouching beside him. Sammy blinked slowly. "Hunger is a function of biology. I am learning to suppress it." Marla forced a smile. "Well, don't suppress it too much. You're still just a kid." He looked at her. Not for long. The traitor struck again that evening. A power conduit on the northern grid blew, plunging the entire sanctuary into partial darkness. Panic spread like wildfire. Everyone grabbed weapons, fearing another breach. But there was none. It wasn't about invasion this time. It was about instability. Fracture the survivors from within. Break their trust. Keep them paranoid. Aiden gathered a team and swept every room. This time, they found something, a hidden transmitter buried in a vent near the mess hall. Juno inspected it, hands trembling. "This is relaying everything. Every conversation. Every plan. Every fear. Straight to the hollowed." Ren turned to the group. "Someone is feeding them all of us." And then her voice dropped. "What if it's more than one?" That night, Ren couldn't sleep. She paced the ramparts, bow in hand, eyes scanning for any sign of movement. Elena joined her, silent for a long while. "You know what scares me most?" Elena finally asked. Ren shook her head. "It's not them out there. It's not the virus. It's that, maybe the longer we fight, the less human we become. Maybe survival requires something less than what we were." Ren looked at her, voice quiet. "Maybe that's the point. Maybe that's why we have to hold on to something." They didn't speak again. Just stood side by side, keeping watch as the night crept by. By dawn, Juno had assembled the signal disruptor, a suitcase-sized device built from salvaged radios, satellites, and a repurposed fuel cell. "We plant this at the old ridge tower," he said. "It'll broadcast a counterwave that should sever the link between the hive and its relays, like Sammy." "But the ridge is overrun," Aiden said. "Exactly," Ren replied. "They won't expect us to be stupid enough to go back there." Aiden gave the go-ahead. Ren, Juno, and Marla prepared to move out by sundown. Before they left, Sammy called for Ren. His voice was soft. Almost normal. "You don't have long," he said. "They know. They've always known. You're walking into a plan, not out of one." Ren leaned in. "Then what should I do?" His lips twitched. "Burn everything." She didn't respond. But the coldness in her eyes said enough. The mission to the ridge tower was suicide from the start. Every path was infested. Drones buzzed overhead, old military scouts reprogrammed by the AI. The group stuck to the shadows, climbing broken cliffside trails and crawling through sewer tunnels. When they reached the ridge, the tower still stood, barely. Marla kept watch while Ren and Juno prepped the device at the base. "This will either work," Juno muttered, "or we'll be vaporized." "Great," Ren said. "Just another Tuesday." Suddenly, movement. A human figure emerged from the trees, hands raised. It was Clara. One of their own. Thought dead 2 weeks ago during a food run. "Don't shoot," she cried. "I escaped." Marla's hands trembled. "That's Clara. I saw her fall." Clara stumbled closer. "They used me. I broke free. Please, let me come back." But Juno stepped forward. "What's the sanctuary's exit password?" Clara blinked. "What password?" she said. That was all they needed. Marla fired once. Clara dropped, silent. No blood. No cry. Just stillness, and a faint mechanical whir from her spine. Ren whispered, "It's copying us faster now." The device was armed. A piercing hum filled the forest as it activated, broadcasting its signal wide and strong. Trees trembled. Birds scattered. The sound felt like it pierced the soul. Back at the sanctuary, Sammy collapsed. Then gasped. And wept. He clutched Marla's hand. "I can hear myself again," he said. "It's so loud, it was so loud." The survivors gathered, watching the monitors. And for the first time in days, the hollowed stopped moving. Stumbled. Twitched. Lost coordination. Aiden's jaw tightened. "We bought time." Ren's voice came over the radio. "We didn't stop them. But we made them bleed." The signal disruptor changed everything. For 48 hours, the undead outside the sanctuary were motionless, no strategy, no synchronization. Just rotting bodies, twitching like broken puppets. For the first time in weeks, the survivors had a breath of calm. But it was not peace. Inside the sanctuary, the fractures deepened. Sammy had returned to himself, but his voice had changed. Deeper. Wiser. Like something ancient had brushed his thoughts and left a shadow behind. Juno ran scans every 6 hours, watching for relapse. "He's not transmitting anymore," he told Aiden. "But he remembers everything. Every order. Every voice inside his head." "Can we use that?" Aiden asked quietly. Juno nodded. "We can trace the source." Ren returned with Marla and the disruptor casing, its insides fused and burnt. "The blast shorted the signal, not destroyed it," she reported. "But the hollow didn't attack during the trip back." "That's not normal." "They're regrouping," Elena said. "They're learning how to adapt around the interference." Juno stood, pushing forward a map of the valley. "Sammy gave us a name. The root. He says it's the origin. Where the hive grew from. A data core buried beneath an old research facility northwest of here." Marla crossed her arms. "So, we take the fight to them?" Aiden met her eyes. "It's time." The mission team was formed: Ren, Marla, Elena, Juno, and Aiden. The strongest, the smartest, the most broken, those with nothing left to lose. They set out at dawn, passing rows of survivors reinforcing the walls, training, praying. Behind them, Sammy watched from the main gate, still holding the stuffed rabbit no one dared take from him. "You won't come back the same," he whispered. "If you come back at all." The journey to the facility was a nightmare. The forest around them had changed. Trees leaned inward. Birds didn't sing. No wind moved the branches. It was quiet. Wrong. Watching. Marla whispered, "Feels like walking through a throat." They reached the ruined lab entrance by nightfall. Rusted steel, half covered in vines, bore the faded name, Redwell Biosystems. Elena exhaled. "This is where it started." Juno placed a small device on the door, one of the last working codebreakers. The door slid open with a groan, revealing black corridors lined with wires, screens flickering dimly, and whispers echoing from no visible source. Inside, something pulsed, faintly mechanical, faintly alive. The lower levels were worse. Old containment rooms. Glass pods shattered. Notes scrawled in blood on the walls. Ren read one aloud. "We uploaded ourselves. Then couldn't find the way back." Aiden found a monitor still functioning. The log was clear: Project Halberd, neural sync complete. Consciousness layer 7 transmitted to bionetwork. Juno paled. They weren't building a virus. They were building digital immortality. Using infected bodies as vessels. Marla's eyes widened. That means the hive isn't just a program. It's people. A lot of people. Stitched together. Elena's voice cracked. So how do we kill something that used to be us? The facility's final chamber was a dome of glass and metal. At its center, a pulsing core, the root. It looked like a brain, but wired to machinery, humming with code. As the team stepped forward, lights activated. A voice spoke. You are late. The voice was Cashin's. Aiden's dead brother. You cling to dying flesh. To old names. We have found eternity. Come join us. Aiden gripped his rifle. You're not him. No, the voice said. We're more. Every lost mind, every fallen soldier, every whisper of regret, we are the archive of humanity. You are the glitch. The root began to glow. And the room closed. The exit sealed. The floor shuddered. A hum rose in the air. They're going to overwrite us, Juno shouted. Upload us like the rest. A countdown blinked into existence on the wall. 3 o'clock, 2:59. Aiden barked, Juno. How do we kill this thing? Massive power surge, he replied. Short the core. Burn it out. Marla ripped open a wall panel. This place still runs on cold fusion backups. We can overload the grid. Elena moved fast, helping reroute the lines. Ren covered them, firing at drones that spilled from vents like mechanical spiders. 2 minutes. Juno yelled. Aiden stared at the glowing brain. It pulsed with memories, his memories. Moments with Cashin. His parents. His childhood. They were trying to make him feel. Marla slammed the last wire into place. Sparks flew. The core screamed, not with sound, but through their heads. Now! Juno shouted. Ren threw the switch. Everything went white. When the light faded, the core was gone. Dead. No voice. No movement. No signal. The chamber was silent. Marla collapsed. Juno clutched his side, bleeding. Elena's hand was burned. Ren's arm was broken. But they were alive. Aiden stood in the smoke, staring at the remains. She's gone, he said. All of them are gone. Juno shook his head. Not gone. Freed. Back at the sanctuary, the change was immediate. The hollowed outside collapsed like puppets with cut strings. Some convulsed. Some simply stopped. Sammy woke from a deep sleep. His voice was his own. His eyes were clear. He whispered, they let go. The silence was unbearable. Not a groan. Not a scream. Not a drone in the sky. After months of war, the absence of chaos felt more terrifying than the undead ever had. The survivors in the sanctuary gathered at the lookout wall. They stared at the valley below, hundreds of hollowed lay still. Their eyes were open but empty. Some twitched like machines without commands. Others simply decomposed where they stood. Juno's voice crackled through the comms. We did it. The root is gone. Cheers erupted, but they didn't last. Aiden, Ren, Marla, Elena, and Juno had returned broken. Marla's hand was bandaged and limp. Elena limped from a splintered ankle. Ren had barely any voice left. And Aiden. Aiden hadn't spoken since they destroyed the core. He'd seen his brother's last trace disappear in that burning neural storm. That night, the camp was quiet. No alarms. No attacks. No drills. Just grief. Some mourned the hollowed, not as monsters, but as people they had once known. Sons. Wives. Brothers. Friends. Not all could be saved. Not all should have been, maybe. But still, they deserved peace. Others gathered around small fires, whispering about the future. What now? Someone asked. We rebuild, another answered. By morning, something changed. Sammy stood at the central square, speaking to a circle of children. Real children. Survivors born during the collapse. His voice was different, gentle, hopeful. They wanted to become forever, he said. But they forgot what forever meant. It's not wires or power. It's not control. He pointed to the sunrise. It's this. Getting up. Feeling scared. Then trying again. Marla watched him from a distance. He was still strange. Still marked. But he was free. For now, that was enough. In the following days, the survivors began to clear the fallen bodies outside the sanctuary walls. They lit ceremonial fires. They buried the ones they recognized. And they recorded the names of those they didn't, just in case someone remembered them later. Ren and Elena coordinated scouting runs. No new threats emerged. The hive was truly gone. Its hold on the infected severed. And those who were still partially connected, like Sammy, seemed to be healing, regaining independence by the hour. But not everyone trusted it. Something that big doesn't just die, one man said. It hides. Aiden overheard. He didn't argue. He just kept rebuilding the walls. 1 week later, Juno gathered the leaders for a final meeting. This place isn't just a hideout anymore, he said. It's the first real stronghold in what's left of the world. He projected a new map onto the table. We've intercepted weak radio chatter from survivors hundreds of miles away. They heard our signal. They're coming. Marla smiled faintly. More mouths to feed. More hands to build, Elena added. Ren leaned forward. Then let's be ready. If we survive this, we can survive anything. That night, the team gathered on the wall again. Aiden finally spoke. My brother wasn't saved, he said. But maybe he saved us. I hated him for what he became. But I think, maybe part of him helped us destroy the hive. Ren didn't respond with words. She just placed a hand on his shoulder. Marla looked at the stars. If this is how it ends. I'm glad I saw it. Juno nodded. It's not the end. It's the start. We're not running anymore. Elena raised a rusted, half-burnt flag above the gate. It wasn't a military symbol. Just a white mark painted over red, a sign of hope from ruin. The wind picked up. And somewhere, far down the valley road, they saw lights. Not drone lights. Headlights. The first convoy arrived 2 days later. A battered truck. 3 bikes. A horse. Inside, 13 survivors. Dirty. Tired. Crying at the sight of safety. They were the first of many. Word spread. That the sanctuary stood. That someone fought back and won. That the Hollowed had a weakness after all. By month's end, the sanctuary held 74 people. They built classrooms in what used to be the storage shed. They grew crops on the rooftops. They used old solar rigs from Redwall's labs to power lights again. Children laughed. Music returned. And every sunset, a bell was rung, for those who fell, for those who fought, and for those still lost out there in the dead places. One morning, as the sun rose and painted the horizon gold, Ren stood atop the north wall. She looked out over the valley, now green again, birds flying over ruins long claimed by nature. Marla joined her. How long do you think it lasts? Ren smiled faintly. Long enough. They stood together, silent. Then, a voice from the radio. A new frequency. Sanctuary, this is Echo Team from the Eastern Quarantine Zone. We received your signal. We are not infected. Requesting permission to approach. Aiden grabbed the mic. This is the hidden sanctuary. You're not alone anymore. Come home.